The rain hasn't stopped in 3 days. It taps the roof of your thatched hut, like the whisper of ghosts, cold, rhythmic, unforgiving. Beneath your reed mat, the floor is damp with the memory of every storm that's ever passed through. Outside, the rice fields lie drowning in mud, your sandals sunk and forgotten days ago. You shiver, not from the cold alone, but from the knowledge that you are invisible, a peasant in the shadows of lords, warriors, and gods. The world does not bend for you, it presses down, and in this life of silence and servitude, you wonder, when was the last time someone said your name? If this story echoes in your chest like the wind across an empty field, tell me, could you have lived such a life without your spirit breaking? Subscribe to wander further. Comment to keep the memory alive. The morning does not begin with light, it begins with sound. A lone crow cries from the edge of a pine-blanketed hill, its voice a thin dagger through the velvet dark. Your eyes open slowly, not from rest but habit, as if tethered to the pull of the earth itself. The mat beneath you is damp, straw-stuffed and thin. It holds the scent of mildew, of bodies pressed against it for too many seasons. Your breath curls in the air like a ghost unsure of its. Placed out outside, the rice paddies do not sleep. They wait, mirror flat, silver with mist, still as monks in morning prayer. The moon hangs low, swollen and pale, reflecting itself in 1,000 flooded furrows. It is beautiful, yes, but not for you. Beauty does not belong to those who bow. For a living, you are awake now, though the sun has not yet spoken. And so begins another day beneath the weight of silence. If this story has already stirred something ancient in you, consider subscribing so we may walk deeper into the past together. Tell me, could you survive a life with no sunrise, only labor? Your hands find the woven rope belt before your eyes. Have even cleared. The same knot, the same gesture each morning. Outside the hut little, more than reeds and smoke-stained wood, your sandals wait in the cold mud. They are warped and broken, but they are yours. You slip them on, feeling the water creep in immediately. The chill runs up your spine, sharp as flint. There will be no warmth until midday, and even then, only if the clouds permit it. Your wife is already awake. She doesn't speak, only nods. Her face is a map of quiet endurance, every line carved by wind and childbirth and waiting. She presses a small bowl into your hand. It contains 2 things, millet porridge and apology. You do not speak either. You slurp it quickly, letting the warmth slip past your cracked lips, grateful and ashamed all at once. The path to the paddies winds through the village like a forgotten song, narrow, familiar, unforgiving. Around you, other figures emerge like shadows from huts, some older, some bent in half from a life of toil. A boy no older than 10 carries a rake twice his height. A woman balances a baby against her hip while dragging a basket of compost behind. Her no one speaks. Words cost energy, and energy is food, and food is always less than what is needed. When you reach the fields, the moon is fading into the west. You kneel beside the paddies, their water black and glimmering, and your knees sink into the sludge with a sickening familiarity. The smell is strong rot and frog spawn, iron and life. Your job today is to clear the weeds. Tomorrow it will be planting. After that, tending. After that, perhaps drowning pests by hand, your arms submerged to the shoulder, skin stung by leeches. The work is endless, as circular as the seasons, but seasons are kind compared to lords. A small cluster of samurai passed through last week. They did not dismount. One of them laughed as he rode by, pointing to your brother's patched tunic. That night, your brother cut the offending piece away, though it left his only garment threadbare and useless in the morning frost. He said, "Nothing." You said nothing. What would you say to men who carry steel and call it justice? Your father once told you, long before he coughed blood into a straw mat and died under a straw roof, that being a peasant is like being a shadow. You must always be present, but never noticed. A shadow is safe. A shadow survives. You remember his words now as you work, pulling weeds one by one, fingernails blackened, spine aching. You are not yet 30, but your back curves like the oldest. Trees bent by storms and silence. A dragonfly lands on your wrist, its wings a delicate mosaic. You pause for a moment, just a moment, and feel something close to peace. Then the overseer calls your name, and it flies away, taking the moment with it. Noon comes without fanfare. You squat beside a tree with a few others, each cradling a wooden box of rice scraps or pickled roots. You trade half a daikon for a whisper of miso. The sun is out now, high and indifferent. Your clothes are wet to the thighs, and your legs throbbed with the pulse of effort. A man nearby falls asleep, sitting up. No one wakes him. Let him dream, even if it is only for 10 minutes. Dreaming costs nothing, and sometimes it is the only escape allowed. By late afternoon, the air grows heavy. The frogs begin their slow choir. A heron stalks the edge of the field, its long legs elegant in the muck. You envy its poise, its stillness. Your body, by contrast, has forgotten grace. Every joint is a memory of effort. The sun begins to slip behind the mountains, and the moon, your companion, your witness, begins to rise once more. At dusk, you trudge home. The sky is washed in pale pinks and ashen violets, colors too soft for the life you live. Your wife meets you with warm water for your feet and a cloth for your hands. She does not smile. You do not expect her to. There is a kind of love that exists in the silences, in the way she touches your blistered palms without wincing. Dinner is barley gruel, and you eat it slowly, letting the blandness settle in your bones. Your children are asleep already, limbs tangled like reeds. You lie beside them, beneath a roof that leaks, on a mat that sags. Your back sings with pain. Your eyes close. The last thing you see is the moon, framed through a crack in the beams. It is full again, silver and watching, as if to say, I was here before you. I will be here after. You exhale, you sleep. The rice will wait for you in the morning. He arrives on horseback, though the road barely deserves the name. Mud splashes beneath the hooves, thick and cold, and your eyes lower before the echo of his approach even reaches your ears. The daimyo does not walk like men of earth. He glides like a shadow across rice water, untouched and untouchable. His robes are layered in brocade, so rich it seems the silkworms must have bled themselves dry to create it. He smells of cedar, incense, and power, and behind him always rides the storm. You bow before you see his face. You do not need to see it. You know what it will hold: detachment, cruelty, or worse, indifference. When a man no longer sees you as a soul, only as a yield, there is no bargaining to be done. He speaks through an attendant, a younger man in lacquered armor, who unfurls a scroll with a snap like the cracking of ice. The taxes have increased. Again, not by much, they say, just a handful more bundles of rice. but you know what that means. It is never just a bundle. It is a week of hunger, a child's supper gone, a roof unrepaired. You hear the murmurs, spread like wind over dry leaves. No one protests aloud. The last to speak out had his home razed and his wife taken into labor service. She never returned, as the daimyo's retinue makes its way up the hill toward the manor fortress. You see the peasants straighten their backs, not from pride, but from fear. Appearance is survival. Kneeling too long is dangerous. Standing too tall is worse. One must be invisible and immaculate, a shadow but a disciplined one. Later, you're summoned to help repair a boundary wall near the estate. It is not your field, it is not your duty, but it was requested, and requests from above arrive like falling stones, silent, sudden, and impossible to stop. You take up a wooden cart and haul stones from the riverbed. They cut into your hands like memory. Each one must be cleaned, stacked, aligned perfectly. If they shift or slide, there will be punishment. Not to you, you will simply be replaced. It is the woman beside you, the old man with the crooked shoulder, your cousin with the sick child. They will suffer. You see the castle walls rising higher each season, bloated with taxes and labor not their own. Its white plaster glows against the mountain fog, but it does not keep the weather out. That beauty is not for warmth, it is for warning, a monument of power, paid for in your sweat and barley. The daimyo's men do not sleep in straw. They lie on mats stuffed with silk, drink tea steeped with flowers, and write poems while their boots are scrubbed clean. You know this not from envy, but from obligation, because sometimes you are sent to clean the floors of their chambers. There, you move on your knees like a dog, eyes to the boards, tracing the patterns in the wood grain with your breath. Once, a samurai laughed as he threw a scroll into the fire, a census you helped copy by dictation. Not needed, he said, they'll breed again. The room erupted in laughter. You did not laugh. You bit your tongue until it bled. The land you till is not yours. It has not been yours for 100 years. You rent it from a man who inherited it from another who won it in war. If your crops fail, you still pay. If your wife dies, you still pay. If the locusts come, the rain flees, the sun burns the earth into leather, you still pay. The punishment for failure is more than a fine. It is shame, eviction, beatings, or conscription. Sometimes it is silence, the kind that makes neighbors avert their eyes, as if your failure is a disease. You remember the last rice audit. The grain was weighed, grain, by an official who smelled of plum wine and perfumed paper. Your offering was short, not from negligence, but from rats. They had burrowed through the storage mat, hollowing out your family's winter hope. You stood there, trembling, as the inspector recorded your name. Reassessment, he said. You nodded. You knew what it meant. It meant someone would come to your home to decide what else you could give. A pot, a blanket, your daughter perhaps. But today, you are lucky. The daimyo passes without incident. He waves once, not to you, but to the air itself, as though acknowledging the landscape like a painting. He sees nothing but yield and order. You are part of the pattern, a brushstroke in someone else's masterpiece. That night, the village is quiet. No songs are sung. Even the frogs seem muted. The tax tally has been posted on the shrine wall. You gather with the others in the dark, faces barely visible by lantern light, reading the numbers aloud like a dirge. Some weep softly. Others stare at the ink, unblinking. You run your finger down the list, until you find your name. It's there, spelled correctly, carved with no emotion. The number beside it is too high. You do not speak. You return home to find your wife stoking the embers. She does not ask, she knows. Together, in silence, you begin to count what can be. Spared, you unwrap the last of the dried fish. You touch the old robe her father left behind. You look at your son, sleeping with his thumb in his mouth. And you do the math. The daimyo will not come again for weeks, maybe months. But his shadow stays. It lingers in the rafters, in the corners of the field, in the hunch of your spine. Even in your sleep, you feel him, not as a man, but as weight. The weight of power, of history, of rice that does not belong to you. And in the morning you will bow again. The wind shifts, not with violence, but with a silence that warns. It moves across the fields like a whisper left behind by the ancestors, rustling the brittle edges of what should have been rice. But the stalks are thin, too pale, already bowing not from the weight of grain, but from the absence of it. The rain came too early this year, too long and too hard. The sun did not follow it as it should have, and now hunger has begun to unfurl its long, invisible hand. You feel it first, not in the belly, but in the gaze of your neighbors. The way they pause before greeting, the way their eyes dart toward your basket when you walk past. You feel it in the shallowness of the air inside your home, the way your wife speaks less, the way your children begin to eat slower, savoring, stretching each grain like it's sacred. Hunger, here, is not sudden. It is ceremonial, a slow procession through the days, peeling life away by layers. This morning, your meal is half a bowl of millet, soaked in water and sprinkled with salt. You traded for an old sandal. It has no flavor, just texture, just memory. Your brother, still a boy really, eats beside you. His eyes are hollowing. His cheekbones show more than they should. He doesn't complain, but you notice the way he presses his lips together after swallowing, as if trying to hold on to the taste. You offer him your last pickled plum. A treasure. It has been tucked away for weeks, hidden beneath the floorboards in a cracked jar. He hesitates. You insist. He takes it and eats in silence, chewing slowly, eyes glassy. You watch his small, chapped hands fold in his lap, and a strange thing happens. You feel pride and sorrow at the same time, twined together like ivy choking a beam. The fields are dying. Not visibly, not yet, but you know. You feel it in the way your sickle cuts to easily, the stems snapping like dry reeds. The earth is soft, too damp below the surface, too cold where warmth should live. The old men of the village say this reminds them of the great leaning, the famine from 2 generations ago, when the dead outnumbered the living by spring. You do not want to believe them, but you do not argue. Their voices are the voice of the field. Children begin to vanish, not by death, not at first. They are sent away to cities, to distant cousins, to temples, anywhere the rice might be. Thicker, you see your neighbor's daughter wrapped in a faded kimono, her hair combed back, her face brave and frightened. She walks the road west with a merchant who promised to find work. You do not ask what kind. You already know. That night, her mother leaves a rice cake at the shrine and weeps into her sleeves. There is talk of stretching the barley with bark powder, of boiling roots from trees the deer have already stripped. Your wife grinds acorns, leeches them for hours, trying to make a porridge that doesn't sting the tongue. It works, barely. The children eat it with faces turned away, as if ashamed of what food has become. The monastery at the edge of the valley begins handing out rice balls, small, hard, and sacred. You wait in line with others, head low, palms cupped. A monk with soot-colored robes gives you two. You thank him, bowing deep. He does not smile, only nods, his face carved with pity. He doesn't speak. That night, you split one of the rice balls into quarters and give your brother the largest piece. He eats without words. He has not spoken in days. A man is caught stealing from the storehouse. They say he took a satchel of rice, enough for 5 bowls. The village headman makes a display of it, ties him to the post, pours water over him, until the frost coats his lashes like snow. The children are made to watch. This is mercy, the headman says. Next time, it will be the rope. You look away, but your brother does not. His eyes are quiet. Too quiet, your dreams grow strange. You dream of full bowls, of mochi cakes with red bean paste, of your mother's hands ladling hot broth into carved bowls. You wake with the taste still clinging to your tongue, and your stomach growls like an old dog chained too long. You try to drink more water. It helps for a while. Then it doesn't. A woman gives birth in the night, and by morning, both she and the child are gone. There was no blood, no fever, only weakness. You hear the midwife tell someone her soul left before her body did. You believe her. Hunger takes many forms. 1. Evening, your brother does not eat. He offers his portion to you. You refuse. He insists. You argue, quietly, but it feels like shouting. Finally, he takes it and eats, but you see the pain in his eyes. He thinks it makes him a burden. You wish you could tell him otherwise, but you don't. Words feel too expensive now, and then one day, the frogs stop singing. The air grows too. Still, the fields go silent, and the birds do not return. You know what it means. Hunger has passed from the belly into the bones. It is now part of the land itself. You begin to count things, the remaining sacks, the days between now and spring, the children who still smile. You stop counting the dead. But there is one thing you do. Each morning you take your brother's hand and walk to the field. Even when there is nothing left to reap, nothing to plant. You go, you walk the rows, you show the earth you are still here. Because some part of you believes, or pretends to believe, that the soil remembers kindness, that the gods are watching, that spring may come again, that hunger, though patient, is not eternal. The river bites this morning. It claws at your mother's arms like a beast awakened too early, cold and angry. But she does not flinch. She kneels ankle-deep in the shallows, her sleeves soaked to the elbow, scrubbing a bundle of cloth against a stone worn smooth by generations. The kimono fabric whispers beneath her grip, rubbing over the rock in a rhythm older than prayer. Frost rims the reeds along the shore. A heron watches from a distant log, unmoving, a pale ghost draped in feathers. She hums under her breath, not for melody, not even for comfort, but to keep her teeth from chattering. You remember this hum? She used to sing it when she rocked you to sleep in the lean years. It has no words, only warmth stretched thin. Today, that same tune is her armor against the cold, against the ache in her knees, against the past that never seems to stay buried. Your mother's hands are cracked and red, calloused along the fingers, where the scrub brush has kissed her 1,000 times. Each knuckle is a chapter, each nail torn and half-healed, a poem in flesh. She carries the world in those hands, cooked in them, washed your fevered body in them, buried to infants with them. You watch her from the hill unnoticed, as the sun begins to climb, painting pale gold along the surface of the stream. She looks small in the water, small but unbreakable. The same woman who once dragged a broken ox cart out of the mud with nothing but a hemp rope and a scream, who stood in front of a tax collector and refused to give up the last bundle of rice because your younger brother was dying and needed the gruel. She bore the beating that followed without a sound. She was married at 13. A quiet ceremony behind the old shrine, barefoot in her father's only white robe, stitched hastily with threads pulled from old funeral cloth. Her husband, your father, was twice her age, a silent man who smelled of smoke and soil. She bore him 5 children, of which 3 lived. She never complained, not when the midwife arrived too late, not when the house burned and she carried your sister out through the flames with nothing but a wet mat wrapped around her head. She learned to barter, to mend, to plant herbs in the cracks behind the wash-house wall. She whispered prayers to the rice god, burned incense when she could afford it, and left offerings at the graves each spring. Coins, folded paper cranes, dried lotus seeds. She wore grief like a second skin, and still she moved. You remember her laughter once. It was years ago. Your father had brought home a fish, freshly caught, a miracle of timing and tide. She cooked it with wild green onions and sesame, and for a few moments that evening her face softened. The lines eased. She laughed, not loud, but real. You were 6. It is the clearest memory you have. Now she straightens, arms trembling. Her back has begun to bend these last few winters, curling like a wilted stalk of bamboo. She lifts the basin, heavy with water and soaked garments, and begins the long walk back to the hut. You hurry to help her. She does not scold you, but she does not thank you either. Gratitude is a luxury. Work must be done. Inside, the fire is still low. Your younger brother sleeps, curled like a cat beside the embers. She lays the wet cloth over the line, fingers moving swiftly with practiced grace. You see how her joints have stiffened, how she rubs them when she thinks no one is looking. But she never stops. Not until the last garment is wrung, the last bowl washed, the last chore crossed from the invisible list etched in her bones. This evening, she sits by the door frame and mends your sleeve. Her eyes are failing, and she squints to see the thread, licking the end carefully before guiding it through the needle's mouth. Each stitch is neat, even you watch her hands move as if they are remembering something, something older than this cloth, this day. She begins to speak quietly, tells you of her mother, a woman you never met, who died when your mother was only a girl. She speaks of her softness, her hair long enough to wrap around her waist twice, her love of persimmon. She tells you she still dreams of her, especially in winter. Dreams of being held, of being told everything would be all right. The kind of lie only a mother can say with conviction. You do not interrupt. You let her speak. Outside, the stars are gathering. The wind slips between the wooden slats of the wall. She finishes the stitching and hands the sleeve back to you. You do not say thank you. Instead, you take her hand in yours. It is rough and warm. A hand that has endured, molded, buried, mended. She looks at you for a moment, eyes rimmed in silver, and then smiles, faint but enough. In feudal Japan, there are no statues to women like her, no poems written, no shrines built, but they are the ones who held the nation's breath, who carried rice and sorrow on their backs, and still found the strength to sing, not loudly, not always in tune, but clearly and until the end. Tonight, She sleeps beside the hearth, wrapped in the same blanket she used to swaddle you. You watch her chest rise and fall, steady and slow. The fire crackles, the wind hums through the reeds, and in that moment, you understand something deep, unspoken, that your mother's hands have always held the world, and the world never noticed, but you notice. You always have. He came in the night, not like a thief, not like a ghost, but like a memory that refused to stay buried. The village dogs did not bark. The crickets did not sing. Only the wind spoke, brushing the thatched roofs with a long, low hush, as if it too knew not to disturb the quiet shape approaching beneath the mountain moon. You saw him first at dawn, standing at the edge of the well. His back was to you, hunched slightly, hands cupped as he drank. His robe hung ragged from his shoulders, the hem stiff with dried mud, the cloth thin as breath. But what struck you first, what froze your feet and dried your tongue, were the marks toward his skin was a scroll. Dragons curled around his forearms, their scales sharp and black as night. Blossoms opened along his shoulders in ink, petals drifting into fire. Kanji ran down his spine like chains, each character etched deep, as if the needle had been guided by vengeance. No man bears tattoos like those unless he has been branded, and branding, in your world, is a sentence that never ends. He turned slowly. His face was drawn, sharp with hunger, older than his eyes suggested. A scar traced his jaw. His gaze met yours, not threatening, not pleading, simply present. There was no fear in him, no apology, only the weight of someone who had already lost everything he could be punished for. Word spread like brushfire. By mid-morning, the village knew he was a returned exile. Once one of you, a peasant, a man of the soil, but taken, condemned, cast out. The mark upon his arm was the unmistakable symbol of rebellion, a chrysanthemum burned into the flesh. Forever a reminder that he had dared to resist. Years ago, they said, he had stood against the tax collectors. A bad harvest, an impossible demand. He refused. Others followed. Briefly, flames rose against the Lord's granary. Pitchforks were raised. But it ended as such things always do. Blood, rope, fire. The rest were executed. He, somehow, survived, and now he had returned. Some say he escaped the island prison, a place the elders speak of only in whispers, where the condemned rot in their own silence. Others claim he was released, not out of mercy, but to haunt us. A living reminder, you do not know which to believe. The headman spoke with him in hushed tones. Later, the village was gathered and told he would be allowed to stay for a time. He would help with repairs, sleep in the shed behind the storehouse, eat what could be spared. But there would be no contact, no questions, no sympathy. You watched him work. He did not speak unless spoken to. His strength was not loud, but relentless. He lifted beams that had defeated 2 younger men. He patched roofs with hands scarred but steady. He bowed politely, spoke softly, and moved like someone who had memorized pain. The children stared at his tattoos with wide eyes. Your brother whispered that the dragons moved at night, that they whispered secrets. You didn't correct him. One afternoon, you found yourself beside him, hauling water. The pails slipped, and you cursed under your breath. He turned to you, his voice a low gravel. "It's all right to be tired," he said. "It's not all right to stop." It wasn't wisdom. It was confession. That night, you couldn't sleep. You thought of what it would mean to rebel, not in the way of warriors, but in the way of starving men. to say no, to refuse. You imagined the heat of the branding iron, the bite of rope, the island surrounded by sea and regret. The next day, the overseers came. Not for him, for another, a man whose tax had come short. You saw the fear in his wife's eyes, the way her hands clutched their youngest. You saw how no one moved to help, not even the tattooed man. That evening you approached him. "Why did you come back?" you asked. He looked at the sunset, because it was still home. You understood then. His return wasn't defiance, it was grief. But the world does not forgive grief. One morning he was gone. No note, no trace. Only a single rice ball left on the threshold of the storehouse, wrapped in a strip of cloth, a dragon's tail inked along the edge. The villagers said nothing. The children asked once, then forgot. But you remembered. You always would. He had come not to spark rebellion, but to remind you of its cost. His body bore the truth you were too afraid to speak aloud. That in a world where silence is safety, resistance is punished not only with pain, but with disappearance, and in the shadows of castles built on your broken backs, the law remains. A blade, and it always, always cuts upward. You hear them before you see them, the horses, restless and tall, their hooves crushing stones like rice grains beneath a millstone. Then the gleam of armor catches the eye, polished and red as drying blood. The samurai are approaching, and, as always, the village becomes quieter than a prayer. You do not run, that would draw attention. You do not hide, that would be guilt. Instead, you bow deeply, precisely, like your father taught you when you were too small to understand why fear must wear the mask of respect. The earth beneath your knees is cold and dry. Your palms press to the dirt. Your forehead hovers just above the dust. You do not look up. When they pass, you smell them first. Not sweat, not soil, but oils and leather and burning incense. One of them laughs. A thin sound, sharp and bright, like a blade drawn in sunlight. You lift your eyes, just for a moment, and you see him. A samurai in dark armor, lacquered and layered like a beetle shell. He is young, perhaps not much older than you, but where your face carries years carved by weather and work. His is smooth, aloof, untouched. He smiles. It is not a smile of cruelty, nor of joy. It is the smile of a man who has never had to question his place in the world. The smile of someone, born knowing that his voice will echo, even in silence. A quiet, unspoken cruelty. That night, the fire in the village shrine burns longer than usual. The samurai are staying in the manor house, and the headman has ordered a celebration. To show gratitude, he says. You are told to bring food, though there is little. You bring dried turnips, a small jar of pickles. Your wife offers a comb, she once received as a wedding gift. All are laid before the steps of the house, where guards in armor watch you with eyes like stones. You serve, not because you want to, but because refusal is a blade you cannot see until it's too late. Inside the manor, you carry trays of saken fish, stolen from some lord's winter storehouse. You keep your eyes low. You do not speak unless addressed. The samurai are drunk. They laugh loudly, slap backs, recite poems that you barely understand. One of them stands and draws his sword. It gleams in the lantern light. Perfect, beautiful, deadly. He swings it once, lazily, and a jug of sake splits clean in two. Applause. Another raises his bowl and declares, a blade must taste blood at least once a season, lest it forget its purpose. He is quoting an old proverb, but the others cheer as if it is a jest. You stand near the doorway, quiet, still, then you hear a name. Your name. Laughter follows. You freeze. They are mocking your accent, the way you answered when asked for more sake. One mimics your bow, exaggerating the curve, pretending to trip over his own robes. The others roar. You feel your face burn. You feel your hands tremble. But you do not move. You do not speak. To do so would be a death sentence, not in name, but in consequence. Later, you return home. You do not tell your wife. She sees it in your silence. You cannot sleep. Outside, the wind howls. The samurai have brought dogs with them. They bark into the night, hungry for anything that moves. You remember stories your grandmother once told of warriors who stole daughters, burned homes, justified everything in the name of honor. You had not believed her then. You do now. The samurai speak often of Bushido, the way of the warrior. They carry scrolls and ink their banners with characters for loyalty, purity, duty. But those words do not warm your bones or fill your bowl. They are painted shields, beautiful and hollow. You have seen the other side of their code, the arrogance, the cruelty, the moments when a man cuts down a farmer for failing to bow low enough. There was a boy once, 15, barely grown. He had stepped into the road too slowly. A samurai struck him across the face with a scabbard. The boy lived, but his eye did not. When the warriors finally depart, the village breathes again, not relief, but release, like a held breath exhaled through clenched teeth. You return to the fields. The sun rises. The soil is still there. It never leaves. But something in you feels heavier, like a stone has lodged in your chest. You think of that smile, not cruel, not kind, just certain. And you wonder, what kind of world allows one man to laugh while another bows in silence? What kind of system molds boys into blades and then calls it glory? You do not say these things aloud. They are dangerous thoughts. Instead, you bow again. You lift the hoe, you bend. You plant because in this world, honor is written in ink and swordplay. But your story is written in calluses and silence, and no one smiles at that. He arrives barefoot, bell in hand, bowl at his side, a shadow cast by the morning fog, stepping lightly through the frost-covered path, like a man who no longer belongs to the world of things. You see him from the edge of the field, his robes frayed and faded to the color of riverstone. His staff topped with a simple ring of iron that jingles softly with every step. He does not look left or right. He walks with the gravity of someone who has long since stopped measuring time by seasons. Your village watches him with a mix of caution and curiosity. Wandering monks are not rare, but they are not frequent either. They come and go like migrating birds, symbols of fortune to some, ill omens to others. He carries nothing but the clothes on his back and a small satchel worn thin by years of walking. His head is shaved. His back is straight. His eyes, when you meet them, are deep and unreadable, like looking into a well where someone once drowned. He stops at the shrine, kneels, and lights a small bundle of incense. The scent sharp, earthy, and sweet curls through the air, mingling with the scent of wet hay and the distant smoke of morning cook fires. He does not speak. He does not need to. The gods already know what he came to say. When he rises, the children follow him. They ask him foolish questions, where he sleeps, what he eats, whether he's ever seen the capital. He smiles, not condescendingly, but as a man who remembers what it is to be young and unknowing. He tells them he has slept beneath stars, and in caves, and once in a tree hollow full of moths. He tells them he eats whatever is offered, even the bitter, even the strange. He tells them the capital is loud and full of lies. That afternoon, you offer him a handful of barley, wrapped in old paper. He bows, deeper than any lord you've seen, and accepts it with both hands. You expect him to move on, to continue his endless walking. But instead, he stays. He spends the night in the abandoned shed behind the rice mill. You bring him warm tea. He accepts it, cradles the bowl in his palms, and thanks you in a voice soft as dusk. You sit across from him in the straw and ask the question that has burned in your chest since he arrived. Why do you walk? He closes his eyes, breathing in the steam. Then he answers, slowly, to remember how to let go. He tells you of the monastery he left behind, high in the northern mountains, where snow fell in silence and the days were marked by bells. He was young then, full of anger, full of pride. He sought enlightenment like it was something to be conquered. But the more he chased it, the further it slipped. So he stopped chasing. I walk now, he says, because staying taught me nothing. You sit in silence for a long while. In the morning, he helps you carry water. He recites old verses from the Lotus Sutra as he works, the words strange and rhythmic, worn smooth by repetition. The other villagers regard him with wary respect. Some offer him scraps. Others look away. One man, the rice overseer, mutters that monks like him are lazy, parasites feeding off the labor of those who sweat. The monk says nothing. He only bows, not in submission, but in acknowledgement, as if saying, I see. Your anger, I accept it. I carry nothing. I need nothing. What can you take from me? Later that day, he blesses a sick child. The mother, desperate, lays the boy before him. The monk places his hand upon the boy's forehead, speaks words none of you understand, and then pours warm tea into the child's mouth. The boy lives. The village whispers. That night, you ask him what he believes. He thinks a long time before, answering that all things pass, that all suffering ends, that the self is a flame, flickering, beautiful, but not real. You don't understand, not fully, but something in his voice stays with you. That night, you dream of a path stretching across a lake of mist, and you are barefoot, and the wind does not bite. On the third day, he leaves. He does not say goodbye, only bows once at the edge of the field. You bow in return. Long after he disappears into the trees, you still hear the sound of his staff, that soft chime like wind through old bells. And in the weeks that follow, something in the village changes, not loudly, just enough. A man gives away an extra fish. A woman helps a neighbor bind her firewood. Your brother begins to hum the monk's chant beneath his breath. And when you bow at the shrine now, you light the incense just a little slower, because though he came in silence and left with no name, the monk in rags reminded you that even in a world ruled by steel and sorrow, there are still those who choose to walk, not away from the world, but gently through it. She wore a silk robe, the color of apricot blossoms in early spring. It shimmered as she walked, delicate and strange against the dust of the village path. Her face was powdered white, her lips stained, red as persimmons, and her eyes downcast, unreadable, looked not forward, but somewhere far behind. You stood with the others in silence, watching her go. Your cousin, 16, sold to the city. No one called it that aloud. They used other words, opportunity, fortune, a new beginning. But you knew what it meant. Her father had no rice left, her mother was coughing blood, and the taxes could not be paid with tears. So the merchant came, slick-haired, sweet-tongued, and offered a price for beauty. Not for work, not for marriage, but for what beauty could become, and the family agreed. What choice did they have? She did not cry as she left. She only glanced once at you, at the hut where you shared dried fruit in childhood, at the fields where you used to run and then turned away. The wind lifted the hem of her robe as she stepped into the palanquin, and for a moment she looked like a character from a woodblock print. Timeless, untouchable, already gone, you heard little at first. The city was far, the road winding, the messages scarce. But then a traveller arrived, a peddler selling brushes and scented paper, and he spoke of her. A girl at the edge of the red district, a dancer with skin like moonlight, a voice like falling snow. You pictured her beneath. Lanterns spinning slowly, hands like petals drifting through air thick with perfume. You imagined her playing shamisen to men who clapped too loudly, laughing at jokes that wilted in her throat. The geisha, they called them, artists of illusion, not wives, not servants, not free. They trained her, the peddler said, taught her how to pour tea so the sound soothed like rain, how to speak poetry with her eyes, how to endure compliments that stung, touches that lingered too long, silences that meant more than words. Her life was measured not in hours, but in performances. Smiles painted and wiped clean again before dawn. You remember her laughter from before, loud, unrefined, real. You doubt they let her laugh like that now. One night, a courier brought a letter. It wasn't addressed to anyone by name, just to the ones who remember. You gathered with her parents in the fading firelight. Her father's hands shook as he opened it. The letter was short. She was safe. She had learned the dances. She missed the plum tree behind the mill. She asked if the fields still bloomed yellow in late summer. She ended with a poem, simple and sad. The wind touches silk, but does not know it is cloth, only that it moves. Her mother wept. Her father folded the paper and tucked it into the sleeve of his robe. Time passed. Another winter. Another failed. Harvest. No more letters came. Some said she had become the favorite of a wealthy patron, a merchant from Edo, or perhaps a minor lord. Some said she had fallen ill and vanished behind paper walls. Some said she had run away and now danced on street corners for coins. You did not know what to believe, but sometimes, in the quiet moments before sleep, you thought of her sitting in a lacquered room, spine straight, eyes blank, a smile practiced into perfection. You imagined her fingers plucking strings by candlelight, her voice soft, her movements fluid, and her heart, perhaps, very far away. And you wondered, did she remember the fields, the mud between her toes after rain, the way the sky turned orange behind the old shrine at dusk? One night, in spring, a stranger came to the village. A woman wrapped in plain cotton, face shaded by a wide hat. She did not speak. She knelt at the shrine, lit incense, and placed a small bundle of silk beside the altar. You approached her after. Gently, she did not remove her hat, but she spoke your name. Her voice was hoarse, unfamiliar, but the shape of it tugged something loose in your chest. She did not stay. The bundle she left contained a folded kimono, soft, old, frayed at the edges. Inside the collar, stitched in red thread, was her name. She had danced. She had endured. and she had returned, if only to say goodbye. You buried the kimono beneath the plum tree, where the roots are strong and the wind still sings. And some nights, when the moon is full and the blossoms open despite the cold, you hear the faint echo of shamisen strings, carried on the breeze, not loud, not mournful, just a song that once was, played by a girl who learned how to smile while starving. They tell you it's an honor. That's the first lie. They tell you your name was chosen from a list, plucked from the registry like a ripe fruit. You are not the only one summoned. 24 others stand beside you now, dust on their feet, confusion in their eyes. Young and old, bent and straight-backed. All of you are handed tools like offerings, ropes, hammers, knives, dulled by rust. There is no ceremony, only orders. You are not going to war. That might have felt noble, or at least clean. No, you are to build a castle wall, a monument, something meant to outlast you. You are to give your strength, your flesh, your silence, and your time, which you can never reclaim. They call it corvée. You call it the bamboo cage. The journey to the site is long. Days of walking, the sun bleaching your skin into leather. The fields fall away behind you, replaced by forests that crowd the path like soldiers. When you finally arrive, the hill rises before you like a wound carved into the earth. Upon its slope, wooden frames stretch high, skeletal towers of bamboo scaffolding, lashed together with straw rope. At their base, the stones, massive, ancient, waiting to be lifted. The castle itself is not yet real. It is an idea being birthed through suffering. You see it in the mud-caked hands of the other workers, in their swollen feet, in the dull glaze of eyes that once burned with fear and now burn with nothing. Your days begin before dawn. You eat a bowl of barley, salted with ash from the communal fire. Then you climb up the scaffolding, barefoot, with heavy loads strapped to your shoulders. One misstep could end you, and if it does, you will be replaced before your body cools. The overseers walk among you, swords sheathed but visible. They shout orders like curses, and when obedience stumbles, they punish swiftly. A man who collapses is lashed. One who speaks back is beaten. You learn the shape of silence, how it wraps around the throat like a silk cord. The bamboo creaks under your weight, whispering threats. Your hands grow thick with blisters, which split, which bleed, which harden into callus. You sleep on dirt, beside strangers who snore like dying animals. The air is never warm. The nights are thick with insects. The stink of sweat and unwashed bodies clings to your skin like another layer of clothing. And yet the wall grows. Stone by stone, the castle takes form. The masons, skilled and silent, fit each piece together with the precision of monks stacking. Prayers. You are not allowed to speak to them. They live in different quarters, eat different food. But sometimes one will nod to you, just once, and it feels like sunlight. One morning, a man falls. You do not know his name. He slips from the top beam. His scream is brief. The thud is louder. Work halts for a moment, then resumes. Number. Burial. No prayers. Just silence. That evening, his space by the fire is taken by someone else. You keep climbing. You begin to dream in stone. When you sleep, you see the walls reaching into the sky, infinite and smooth. You wake with your hands curled into fists, nails digging into your palms. Once, you cry, just once, behind the woodpile, away from the firelight. It is not from pain, but from a hollow that has opened inside you. wide and echoing. Weeks pass. One day, while stacking timber, you catch sight of the Lord, the daimyo for whom this monument is being made. He walks the perimeter with 2 guards, pointing at corners, nodding at angles. He does not see you. He sees the stone, the scaffolding, the future fortress that will bear his name long after you've crumbled. He smiles. You realize then this is not a prison of bamboo. It is a cage made of people, a structure of obedience, sacrifice, silence. You are the beam, the nail, the forgotten piece beneath the ornament. When the wall is finished, they let you go. No reward, no thanks, just a dismissal, a wave of a hand, a number crossed from a list. You return to your village with a limp and a scar where a stone fell on your shoulder. Your brother does not recognize you at first. Your mother weeps. You try to explain what you built, but the words feel false. They do not capture the smell of wet wood, the hunger between breaths, the scream that still rings in your ear, and the castle. You never see it again. But sometimes, when the wind moves through the tall reeds near the riverbank, you hear the creak of bamboo, and in your dreams you are climbing again, not toward a roof, not toward the sky, but toward something that always vanishes just before you reach it. It begins with a stillness, the kind that presses against your skin like breath held too long. Even the insects fall quiet, as if some invisible hand has paused the world mid-motion. The clouds hang low, heavy as sorrow, and the birds, those talkative spirits of the trees, have flown or vanished. You know what this means. Everyone does. The old women tie charms to their doorposts. The fishermen pull in their lines. The rice paddies lie flat and waiting, like mirrors prepared to shatter. The storm is coming. You feel it in your chest before you see it, a tension, like string drawn taut, waiting for the break. Then the wind rises. It doesn't blow, it pushes. The bamboo groves bow in agony, their tops thrashing like seagrass. Leaves fill the air. Dust lifts from the road. Your sister calls out, voice thin and sharp with fear, and you grab her hand. As the sky turns the color of old bruises, you run, not toward shelter, toward the root cellar, dug by your grandfather's hands, reinforced with stones, lined with straw that now reeks of mildew. You slide the door closed just as the rain begins, not drops, sheets, walls of water, slamming against the earth with such violence that even the shrine bells begin to sway. Inside, it's dark. Your sister clutches your arm, shaking. You find the lantern by touch, a storm lantern, rusted but reliable, the one your mother kept for childbirths and typhoons. You strike the flint, once, twice, then light, a small flicker, golden and brave. It paints the cellar in soft halos, revealing your sister's wide eyes, your own trembling hands. The small sack of dried beans, stored for emergencies, dot above you. The storm roars. You feel the earth tremble as wind rips across the fields. The thatched roofs, yours among them, groan under the weight of rain and sky. Somewhere, something crashes. A cart, maybe a roof beam, maybe a tree splitting in half. You close your eyes and breathe slowly, counting each exhale like a prayer. The storm does not pass quickly. It lingers like regret. Hours stretch into night. You eat a few beans. Your sister dozes, head on your shoulder, her breath warm against your collarbone. You listen to the howl, to the crack, to the low rumble of distant thunder. The lantern stays lit, its flame shrinking slowly, its oil nearly gone. In the middle of the night, you climb out. The wind has slowed. The rain still falls, but softer. Now tired, almost ashamed, you step into a world you barely recognize. The village is not broken, it is unmade. Roofs lie in pieces, fences have vanished, trees kneel sideways, their roots exposed like open wounds. The shrine's gate is gone, its paper offerings shredded into wet confetti. Chickens wander the road, dazed and silent. The rice paddies overflow, the levees ruptured, the water black with mud. You find your home, it stands barely. The roof has caved on one side. Your mother crouches by the doorway, pale, lips pressed tight. She wraps your sister in blankets, touches your cheek with a hand that still trembles. You don't speak, there's nothing to say. Neighbors begin to gather, like crows after harvest. Some cry, some begin to dig, others simply stare. You help lift what can be saved. A cooking pot, a water jug, a sandal. One boy finds his dog alive under a collapsed beam. He weeps into its fur. At noon, the samurai arrive, not to help, to inspect. They ride slowly through the wreckage, their armor untouched by rain. They speak of reports, of rebuilding quotas, of labor taxes. Then they leave. Their horses do not stumble. Their robes do not drag. Later, you stand by the riverbank. The water is swollen, angry, frothing at the edges like a fevered mouth. You see the remains of someone's tea chest drifting past. You don't know whose. You light the storm lantern again, though there is no need. The sky is clearing. But you do it anyway. A ritual, a small defiance. As dusk settles, villagers gather at the shrine steps. The gate may be gone, but the steps remain. Someone lights incense. Someone sings a lullaby for the dead, even though no names have yet been spoken. You join them. You place the lantern at the center of the steps. Its flickering light mirrored in a dozen teary eyes. It burns until night swallows it whole. The next morning, you begin again. Rebuild, replant. Because in feudal Japan, the storm is never the end. It is only another season. The ink dries on the scroll before the meaning ever reaches your eyes. It is pinned to the shrine gate with a reed splint, flapping gently in the morning breeze like a cloth banner caught between reverence and mockery. You approach it slowly, squinting. The brush strokes are elegant, long swooping characters painted with a practiced hand. Their shapes remind you of herons mid-flight, of willow branches dipped in river water, but you cannot read them. You never learn, don't you stand there in silence, pretending. You tilt your head, you stroke your chin. Others pass by and do the same, nodding as if in understanding. But no one speaks, no one asks, because asking would expose what everyone already knows, that none of you were ever taught to read. The village scribe died 3 nights ago, a quiet man with bent shoulders and a voice that sounded like paper rustling. He lived alone. When his fire stopped smoking, no one noticed for 2 days. When they found him, his inkstones were dry, and the final scroll he was working on lay unfinished, a sentence trailing off mid-line like a breath never exhaled. His death means more than just a lost life. It means a lost language. He was the only one who could read the Lord's notices, who could write the tax records, who could pen a letter for a desperate mother to send to a son taken by the army. Without him, your village has no eyes. You try to remember how the strokes worked. He had shown you once, just once, a character that meant tree. It looked like a cross with roots. You'd tried to draw it in the dirt afterward, but It crumbled beneath your toe. That knowledge, like so many things, slipped through your fingers before you even had the shape of it. Now the priest says, a new scribe will come, sent from the capital, someone trained in the schools, someone with inked sleeves and an air of condescension. But he hasn't arrived yet, and you can feel the illiteracy like hunger, a dull ache that colors everything. You think of all the stories you'll never read, of the maps you'll never follow, of the names you'll never know how to carve into wood. Your wife once asked if you could teach your daughter to write. You shook your head, ashamed. She asked no further questions. Instead, she taught the child songs, oral memories, echoes of a history not written but sung, passed from mouth to ear like rain from cloud to leaf. In the evenings by firelight, your daughter hums these songs. Her voice is clear, high, careful. You listen, eyes closed, imagining the words as brushstrokes, each note a line, each silence a pause. You realize this is your scripture now, your only book. Once, a traveling monk passed through and left behind a torn scroll. You found it later in the ash pile, singed at the corners, the characters ghostly. You kept it, not because you could read it, but because it felt like something sacred. You sometimes hold it to your chest, imagining what it might say, a poem, maybe a prayer, a memory. The world of paper belongs to someone else. The samurai read, the scribes read, the monks and merchants, they read, they write, they rewrite. They shape law and order with brushes, not blades. A single character on a scroll can move families, declare war, ban songs. A name written in ink can preserve a legacy for centuries. And you will never see your name in such ink. You will leave behind no words, only footprints. Still, you try. That evening, you take a stick and draw in the dirt behind the house. You try to remember the character for tree. You draw it once, then again, then a third time. Each attempt wobbles, but you keep going. You do not stop until the moon rises and the wind brushes the dirt away. Your daughter finds you there. She crouches beside you, watching. What's that? She asks. You smile. A story. She nods solemnly. Then, with her tiny finger, she adds a mark beside your line, a swirl, a sun, a symbol of her own. You realize, then, that maybe the story does not need to be understood. Maybe it only needs to be shared. You stand. The scroll at the shrine still flaps in the wind. You don't know what it says, but you bow to it anyway, not because you understand, but because you wish to. The child found the cross. He was playing behind the old storehouse, chasing a paper ball flattened by the rain, when he tripped over something buried in the mud. A small wooden object, blackened by fire, split at the base. Not the Tory shape of the native shrines. Something else, sharper, foreign, unmistakably Christian. By nightfall, the whispers began. You gather with others at the edge of the village. Cloaked in darkness, the wet path glistening under a sickle moon. No one says it aloud, but all know. Someone among you had hidden a faith that is forbidden, and now it has been found. The fear is not loud. It is quiet, quieter than prayer. It moves through the fields like fog, clinging to the edges of breath, curling into the folds of sleeves. You remember what they say happened in the last village that was accused, the arrests, the disappearances, the bodies displayed as warnings. You remember the sound of sandals dragging across frost, the way the priests' robes burned so slowly. It had been years since you last heard of the Kirishitan, the hidden Christians. Converts left behind after the foreign missionaries were expelled when the Tokugawa decree made their beliefs treason. But faith, like a weed, returns where it is least welcome. You know now that it never left. Later, by the river, you speak to the midwife, old hunched, her eyes as narrow as the crack in a shrine door. She says nothing at first, but then she nods toward the western ridge. There was a house, she whispers. Years ago, they lit candles in jars, sang in a strange tongue. I saw it once. They thought no one watched. You follow her gaze. A ruined structure half swallowed by vines, its roof collapsed, its altar stone overgrown. You see it now for what it once was, a secret chapel, its walls once echoed with stolen songs. The following morning, the officials arrive. Not samurai, not yet. Just men in robes bearing scrolls and questions. They search homes, overturn mats, peer into cellars. They ask for names, demand confessions. A few cry, most remain silent. Silence becomes the only refuge. You worry that your family will be accused simply for listening. That night, a woman is taken. She was a weaver, widow, quiet. You watched her feed birds on her porch for years, her hands always busy with thread. They say she had a symbol in her home, a cross carved into the underside of a bowl. They say she held her breath when the inspector passed. You see her once more as they lead her away. She does not resist. Her eyes meet yours for a single moment, and you see something there that startles you. Peace. Later, a man from the coast arrives. A fisherman, grey-haired, cloaked in a salt-scented shawl. He speaks in hushed tones to a few villagers. You overhear him say the word Arosho, a hidden prayer. You realize then how deep this faith has burrowed, how it has taken root not in grand cathedrals, but in kitchens, in gardens, in the rhythm of spinning wheels and whispered songs. You ask yourself, why risk everything for a God they cannot name publicly, for a cross that cannot be shown, for a story outlawed by the empire? Then, one night, you find your brother sitting by the hearth. In his hands, he holds a carved wooden figure, worn smooth, faceless, shaped like a mother holding a child. Where did you get that? You asked. He doesn't answer. He only presses it to his heart and closes his eyes. In that moment, you do not see rebellion. You do not see heresy. You see longing, a yearning that cannot be legislated out of someone's soul. The authorities do not return. They say no proof was found. The ashes of the cross are swept away. The woman's house is boarded up. But something lingers. A scent of smoke, a hush before sleep, a pause in the rhythm of a song. You begin to notice things. A neighbor who makes the sign of the cross as he passes the well, disguised as a stretch. A girl who sings lullabies that don't belong to any temple you know. A boy who wears a charm carved with a strange symbol, not Buddhist, not Shinto, not anything you can name. You do not report them, you never will, because in a world where even belief is taxed and punished, their quiet resistance is a form of hope, and in that hope, in that whispered defiance, something sacred survives. Not loudly, not openly, but fully. The cicadas scream as if the sky is burning. Their cries rise from the treetops like steam from boiling rice, thick and unrelenting. The summer air clings to your skin, hot, slick, breathless. Even the wind has abandoned the fields. The rice paddies shimmer beneath the sun, but the water inside them has gone still, as if waiting for permission to move. You step carefully. Across the narrow dikes, your sandals sticking to the warm mud. your tunic pasted to your back with sweat dot at the edge of the village. Shaded by a sagging cloth awning, sits an old vendor's cart. You have passed it many times, but today your feet pause. There's something about the smell, faint, sweet, savory, that pulls at your stomach like a memory. You approach slowly. The man behind the cart doesn't look up. He's fanning, a bowl with his hand, chasing away the flies. Sober, he mutters. You nod, and he ladles the noodles from a bamboo basin. They are cold, almost white, floating in a broth as clear as river water, and topped with the faintest sprinkle of green onion. He hands it to you without ceremony. You bow, accept it with both hands, and lower yourself onto a flat stone beneath the shade of a persimmon tree. The first bite is quiet. The noodles slide across your tongue, firm, smooth, alive with chill. The broth is light, earthy, tinged with soy and something like smoke. You exhale. It is not a feast. It is not warm, but it is enough, more than enough. Children run past, barefoot and shrieking with laughter, chasing each other with long blades of grass. You smile. One stops to look at your bowl, eyes wide with envy. You hand her the last noodle. She hesitates, then takes it. Her fingers are sticky with plum juice. She runs off giggling. A moment later, your wife joins you. She carries a basket of firewood, her face flushed with heat. She kneels beside you, sighs deeply, and wipes her brow with the sleeve of her robe. You offer her the last sip of broth. She drinks it without thanks, but her expression softens. In this moment, even silence feels full. Behind you, a neighbor sharpens a sickle. The scrape of stone on metal adds rhythm to the day. The smell of miso and fish drifts from someone's window. A dog lies belly up in the road, tongue out, dreaming of cooler days. You watch the light move through the trees, casting shadows like fingers across the ground. For the first time in weeks, your shoulders loosen. You lean back. The sober settles in your belly like a blessing. This is not a chapter of hardship. It is not a story of rebellion or sorrow. It is a pause, a breath between storms, a bowl of cold soba eaten in the shade, shared with laughter and without urgency. It is what your ancestors must have meant when they spoke of contentment. Later, you help your wife gather kindling. The cicadas grow louder. In the distance, thunder murmurs over the hills, but no one flinches. You return home slowly, hands full of twigs, heart strangely light. That night, the wind returns. It stirs the curtains. It cools your skin. The fire burns low, and you sit beside it with your family. Your brother carves a small flute from a reed. He plays a tune with only 3 notes. Your daughter claps along. The rhythm is crooked, imperfect, but perfect in its imperfection. You think of the bowl, of the chill that kissed your tongue, of the way the broth caught in your throat and reminded you, you are still here in feudal Japan. Life is not measured in great deeds. It is measured in bowls, in the space between hunger and fullness, between silence and song, between shadow and shade, and sometimes in the heat of high summer, when the land breathes fire and the body wilts, a bowl of cold soba becomes more than food. It becomes peace. The lanterns sway like fireflies caught in a memory. You walk the narrow path to the shrine, your hands cupping a small paper light, its flickering flame protected by colored silk. Around you, others do the same, neighbors, children, old men with backs bent by seasons. No one speaks loudly. Voices fall to whispers, as if afraid to disturb what waits in the dark. It is Oben, the time when the dead come home. The air is thick with incense and the scent of river lilies. Smoke rises from scattered altars, curling through the bamboo groves like ghost fingers searching for old doors. Offerings line the shrine steps, bowls of rice, salted fish, slices of persimmon, not for the living, for those who left. You place your lantern beside your sister's. She kneels, hands pressed in prayer, her eyes glistening in the half-light. Between you, a small wooden tablet bears the name of your grandfather. The strokes were carved years ago, now faded by weather. Still, you remember each one. You remember the way his voice cracked when he told stories, how he used to hide barley cakes in his sleeves for you and your brother during lean winters, how his laughter shook the entire house. Tonight, he will walk again. You do not see the spirits, but you feel them, in the hush between footfalls, in the way the wind moves without touching the leaves, in the sudden flutter of a moth's wings against your lantern's silk. You remember the stories of souls drawn to light, of ancestors, waiting for songs, of those who died alone, whose names are whispered so they will not be forgotten. A procession forms. You and your family walk behind a line of dancers in white. Their arms rise and fall like cranes. Their feet step in rhythm to a drum that beats slow and low, like the pulse of the earth itself. The Bon Odori, a dance for the dead, a greeting, a farewell. Your daughter tries to mimic the movements. She stumbles, laughs, then catches the rhythm. You watch her from behind, your chest aching. You think of your mother, long gone, of the child you never held, of the names you speak only. At night, you whisper them now, one by one, offering each syllable like a petal to the river dot. The shrine priest chants an old sutra, his voice worn and soft, weaves through the crowd like smoke. Some kneel, some cry, some simply stand still, eyes closed, waiting for the feeling that tells them they've been seen. You are not sure what you believe, but you bow anyway. At the riverbank, 100 lanterns are placed upon the water. They drift slowly, pushed by fingers of current, their reflections trailing like ribbons of fire. You release yours gently. It spins once, then glides forward, joining the others in a silent caravan toward the sea. Your sister clasps your hand. Do you think they see us? She asks. You nod. You think they never stopped. The lanterns grow smaller in the distance, tiny. Stars falling into the mouth of night. Children wave. Elders wipe their eyes. Somewhere a flute begins to play, soft, wistful, cracked with age. The sound hangs in the air like dew. Back home, you place your family's ancestral tablet back on the shelf. You fold the cloth that covered the altar. You pour out the cup of tea left for the departed, returning it to the earth. The rituals are complete, but the feeling remains, a closeness, a thinning of the veil. That night, as you lie beneath the thatched roof, your dreams are filled with footsteps, familiar ones. A hand on your shoulder, the scent of pine and ash. You do not wake with fear, only with a quiet knowing they were here. Not loudly, not visibly, but fully. And in the morning, you rise with the sun, your body heavier and lighter all. At once, you walk the path to the fields, glancing once at the river, now empty of flame. The lanterns are gone, but the light remains. He arrived at twilight, when the fields wore shadows like robes and the sky hung low with the ache of coming. Rain, you heard him before you saw him, the soft clink of metal at his side, the weight of presence in his step. Not hurried, not hesitant, just there, as if summoned by a thought left unfinished. He was lean, dust-covered, and wrapped in a faded travel cloak that had once been blue. His sword, a long, plain katana, hung at his waist, not polished, not gleaming, but worn, as though it too had walked through years of silence. He did not speak. He bowed once at the shrine and waited. The headman emerged after a time. Words were exchanged, quiet ones. By nightfall, a room had been cleared in the abandoned tea house, and the Ronin was given rice, tea, and space. Nothing more, nothing less. You watched him from the edge of the road, curiosity twisting in your chest. A samurai with no master, a blade without an oath. The stuff of stories and cautionary whispers. The children mimicked his walk in play. The elders muttered about curses, about wars lost, about men who follow only their ghosts. In the morning, he was already at work. Not fighting, not training, but chopping wood behind the storehouse. His movements were clean, precise, neither rushed nor showy. You approached, offered to help. He nodded once and passed you an axe. No greeting, no name. Days passed. He kept to himself, ate little, spoke less. But every night, after the sun slipped behind the hills, he walked the village path, slowly, deliberately, like a man retracing steps he wasn't sure he'd ever taken. You followed him once, barefoot, careful not to be seen. He went to the edge of the rice paddies and stood there, unmoving, staring into the water as if searching for someone beneath the surface. Finally, you spoke. Why do you stay? He didn't look at you, just answered, voice low. Because leaving changes nothing. You learned bits of him, piece by piece. Once, he served a minor daimyo in the north. There was a betrayal of honor, of trust, of life itself. The details were never told, but you saw them in his posture, in the way his hand hovered near his sword even when no danger stirred, in the way his eyes scanned the horizon like a man who had long since given up finding home. He did not teach, but he did not forbid learning. One evening, you brought him a wooden practice sword, a child's toy really. He raised an eyebrow, then, slowly, showed you how to hold it, how to breathe, how to move with the wind, not against it. He corrected you without speaking. He guided you without pride. Others began to notice. A few young men joined, then a boy, then a girl. Soon every evening, a quiet gathering formed at the edge of the field. Not a school, not a dojo, just movement, just breath, just discipline. But the sword is never just a sword. One morning, a traveling merchant arrived with news. A local magistrate had been assassinated. Rumors of rebels, of lordless warriors organizing uprisings. The Ronin's presence grew heavier. Eyes watched him differently now. The headman grew cold. Orders came down from above. All suspicious persons were to be questioned, monitored, removed if necessary. You warned him. He nodded. I know, but you've done nothing wrong. He looked at you, and something in his eyes broke. That's never mattered. That night, he left. No farewell, no note, just the absence of footsteps, just a space where weight used to be. You found a single item left behind in the tea house. His sword, wrapped in cloth, resting on the floor like a slumbering animal. You lifted it once. It was heavier than you imagined. Not in weight, in memory. He had chosen to leave it, to leave behind violence, to vanish before becoming the excuse for more blood. Some say he was hunted. Others say he returned to the north. A few believe he walked into the sea and let the tide carry him. You believe something else, you believe he is still walking, not toward peace, but through it, not toward redemption, but through remembrance. And sometimes, when the wind brushes the grass just so, you hear the whisper of sandals on the road, and you remember the man who had no home, but taught you how to stand. The sky is colorless, not gray, not blue, just blank, like a scroll waiting for ink that will never come. You stand at the riverbank, watching as planks are hoisted onto thick beams, as ropes are pulled taut between pillars carved from cedar, and as a bridge slowly grows from one bank to the other, though the other side is nothing but forest. There is no road there, no town, no shrine, just trees and silence. They say the daimyo ordered it, a command sent down from the castle in the mountains, sealed with lacquer and silk ribbon. Construct a bridge at the village ford, it read. Number, reason given, no destination listed. Just an order as solid as stone, as unquestionable as sunrise. And so you build. You were conscripted again, just weeks after returning from wall duty. Your hands had only begun to soften. Your back had only just stopped aching. But rest is a privilege, and privilege does not live in your hut. The carpenters lead the design. Men brought in from elsewhere, skilled in joints and beams and the language of elevation. You carry wood, you dig, you hammer pegs until your palms split and your wrists burn. The bridge creeps across the river like a centipede, slow, exacting, indifferent. At night, you lie on straw with the others, breathing in the smell of sawdust and wet rope. You talk about nothing. You don't ask why the bridge is being built. You already know the answer, because it must be, because the Lord wills it, because the shape of power is often absurd. Once a boy dares to ask the overseer what's on. The other side, the overseer laughs. The Lord's favor, it is not a joke, not entirely. Each day, the bridge lengthens. You walk its length in the evenings, staring at the water below, dark, swift, singing over rocks. You think about what else that could have become. Homes, repairs, coffins. Instead, it becomes a path to emptiness. But still, it is beautiful. The way the beams catch the light, the curve of the handrails, the way the reflection ripples like a poem never finished. One morning, a man falls. The scaffolding gives. A crack, a splash, a scream. You rush to the edge, see him floating face down, his robe blooming like ink in water. No one speaks. You haul him out. The overseer clicks his tongue. Unlucky, he says, then tells you to get back to work. The man is buried near the base of the bridge, beneath a tree. No marker, just a mound of dirt and a flattened straw hat. You wonder if anyone will tell his family, or if he, like the bridge, will simply become part of the landscape, noticed, but not remembered. As the final beam is laid, you watch the carpenters bow low before the structure. It is complete, a thing of purpose, without reason, a gesture, a symbol, a monument to command. The daimyo does not come to see it. He sends word of approval. That is all. The bridge stands, and still, no one crosses it. You return home. Your wife sees the bandages on your hands and says nothing. Your daughter touches your elbow gently. That night, you dream of the bridge. But in the dream, it stretches far. Not just across the river, but into mist, into clouds, into somewhere you cannot name. The villagers avoid the bridge. They say it's cursed, that it leads to a place not meant for footsteps. Children dare each other to touch its rail. Few do. But one evening, you walk to it alone. You step onto the wood, listening to it creak under your weight. You walk to the center. You look down into the river, the same river you crossed as a child, bare-legged, laughing. You close your eyes, and you realize something. This bridge may lead nowhere, but it was built by hands that knew suffering, by backs that broke for beauty, by men who will never be remembered except in the echo of footsteps over timber. And that, in itself, is a kind of purpose. It falls in silence. No wind, no thunder, no warning, just snow, descending like ash from some quiet fire in the sky, blanketing the world in white so soft it hardly seems real. You step outside and the air bites gently at your cheeks, the cold tasting clean and sharp like the edge of a new blade. Each flake lands without a sound, yet together they smother everything. The roofs, the paths, the footprints, the past. The fields vanish first. The dark soil, the bent stalks, the stubs of harvest, all erased in a matter of hours. Then the fences, then the wells. By afternoon, even the tallest trees look humbled, their branches bowed beneath winter's weight. Only the river holds its shape, a black ribbon winding through the whiteness like ink spilled on parchment. Your breath fogs before you. Your fingers sting inside your sleeves. Inside the house, the fire struggles. The wood is green, wet from the last rain, and burns with more smoke than flame. Your wife fans it desperately, her face flushed, her eyes weary. Your daughter huddles under the straw blanket, her cough soft but persistent. You offer her the last pickled radish. She eats it slowly, chewing with reverence. There is no food left. You've stretched the barley. You've boiled the rice gruel to water. You've gathered pine needles and tried to make broth. But the snow does not feed. It buries, it forgets. And still you go outside. You walk the village path, your sandals wrapped in straw, your body wrapped in silence. The sound of snow is not silence, not truly. It's a hush, a deep and endless hush that mutes the world's cruelty for a while. The usual cries are gone. No children laugh, no dogs bark, no tools clang in the fields. The world waits. You find your brother near the shrine. He's digging with a broken ladle, trying to reach the firewood buried beside the priest's hut. His face is pale, his lips are cracked. You kneel beside him, wordless. Together you dig. Eventually, you uncover a bundle of sticks wrapped in hemp cloth. You break one open. It's damp, but better than nothing. You carry it home, splitting it carefully. The fire thanks you. The smoke stings your eyes. That night, you dream of summer, of sweat running down your spine as you carry buckets of water to the rice paddies, of frogs singing from the banks, of your daughter running through tall grass, laughing. You wake to darkness, too cold, too coughing. Your wife wraps the child tighter, her fingers tremble. You hear the faint crack of ice forming in the water jar. Outside, the snow continues. By morning, 2 of your neighbors are gone. One was an elder who hadn't left his bed in a week. The other was a young mother with twins. They say she sat too long by the fire and never stood again. No one knows what happened to the children. They were taken in by the shrine priest or by the wind. The headman calls a meeting. Only a few attend. The rest are sick or buried beneath blankets. He says the Lord's stores will not be opened, that the supplies are spoken for, that the snow is not an excuse for disobedience. No one argues. You return home. Your brother speaks of taking the cart to the next village, 3 days away, over the mountain. You consider it, but the snow is too deep, and your child is too weak. So you stay, you feed the fire, you ration the broth. You wrap your daughter in your old robe, the one your mother sewed before you married. You hold her when the coffin comes, and hum the song your grandmother used to sing. The snow presses against the house. You hear it whispering, not with cruelty, but with indifference. It does not hate you. It simply is. In the morning, you find a sparrow frozen beneath the eaves. Its wings are folded, its eyes closed. You bury it beneath the tree where you buried your father. The ground is too hard for digging, so you place it in the snow and cover it with stones. Then you go back inside and you wait. Because winter is not a visitor, it is a siege. It tests your patience, your strength, your will to endure. And in feudal Japan, no storm is more faithful than snow. You do not pray for warmth. You pray for the chance to endure one more night, and then one more after that. It stands in the center of your garden, tall and still, a skeleton of what it was meant to be. Each spring, when the other trees burst into color, soft explosions of white and pink fluttering in the breeze, like breath made visible, this one remains bare. Its limbs stretch skyward like pleading hands. Its bark is unbroken, its roots steady, and yet it has never bloomed. You were a child when it was planted. Your mother chose the spot carefully, her hands pressing the soil as gently as if she was swaddling an infant. She whispered a prayer for luck, for growth, for future. Shade, that was the year your sister died. Your mother never spoke of the connection, but you felt it. This tree was meant to hold what had been lost. Every year you wait. You rise early when the frost breaks and step barefoot into the yard, scanning its branches for any sign of buds. Nothing, not even the blush of a leaf, and yet it lives. Number disease, no rot, just silence. Others bloom. The plum tree by the shrine, the apricot near the headman's house, even the wild cherry saplings along the river. The children gather beneath those branches each spring, catching petals in their hands, laughing as they float down like blessings. But yours, this tree that has never offered shade or sweetness, stands like a stubborn memory. Still, you care for it. You rake the soil around its base. You gather fallen leaves. You brush snow from its limbs in winter, wrap straw around its trunk when the frost runs deep. You do not ask why it does not flower. You simply continue. One year, your wife suggests cutting it down. Use the wood, she says gently. It could warm the hearth. You nod, but you do not move. That night, you sit beneath it alone. The sky is pale with starlight. The wind hums through its branches, empty of blossom, full of sound. You remember the year the roof collapsed, the year the famine came, the year your daughter was born too small and lived anyway. The tree saw it all. It did not speak, but it stayed. Perhaps that is its bloom, not color, not scent, but presence. There's a kind of beauty in things that fail to become what we expect. You think of your own life, never glorious, never soft, never praised. A life of bending, of breaking, of waking before the sun and sleeping with sore bones and silent prayers. A life that never bloomed in the way stories promise. And yet, here you are, still rooted, still reaching. Your daughter ties a ribbon to one of its limbs when she is 7. Bright red, frayed at the ends, it dances in the wind like a flag. Now it has a flower, she says. You do not correct her. As she grows, she adds more little offerings of paper and cloth, of things she finds along the road. Her friends begin to visit the tree. They sit beneath it, read stories, leave poems scratched into bark with sticks. It becomes a kind of shrine, not to what it is, but to what it might be. Years later, when she is grown and gone, the tree still stands. The ribbons fade, but you replace them, one each spring. A habit, a ritual, a promise. And then one morning, when your hands are older, your knees slower, you step outside and see something different. Not a blossom, but a bud. Just one dot, tiny, green, curled like a secret. You laugh, you weep, you say nothing. The bud never opens. A late frost takes it, but it doesn't matter. It was enough. You walk inside, warm tea, waiting, and look once more through the window at the tree that never bloomed. Not as the others did, not as it was meant to, but it endured. It stood, it was loved, and sometimes, in a world of storms and swords and silence, that is bloom enough. She sings to the chickens as she scatters, feed, off-key, half-whispered, yet full of something bright. The song is one you don't know. She says she made it up, and you believe her. The notes rise and fall like reeds swaying in wind, like a stream talking to itself. The birds cluck, unimpressed, but she sings louder anyway. She is 12 now, lean-limbed and fast. She runs through the paddies without fear, bare feet slapping mud, sleeves rolled high, hair tangled by breeze and work. Her laugh cuts across the village like sunlight through fog. The others say she's too wild, that you've raised her wrong, that a girl should be quiet, graceful, soft, but you have seen softness crushed, and you have learned that grace is not always survival. So you let her be loud one morning. She kneels beside your tools, watching as you bind a new handle to the hoe. Why do we have to bow to the priest? She asks. He's not a god, you pause. We bow to show respect, but does he respect us? You don't answer. Not because you lack one, but because her question carries its own weight. That same week, she mimics a samurai's stance behind the house, a bamboo stick clutched like a blade, her face set in solemn mockery. I am Lord Irikawa, she declares, swinging wildly at the scarecrow. Give me your rice, or face my wrath. Your wife scolds her. You smile into your sleeve. Later that night you find her drawing in the dirt, stick figures with swords, others kneeling, a house burning beside them. What's this, you ask? She shrugs. The story of when our village fought back. You stare at the lines. The tiny figures look defiant, upright, alive. Your chest tightens. She dreams without permission. She questions the gods, mocks the lords, and dares to write stories not yet lived. She is a firefly trying to burn brighter than the stars, a seed trying to split stone. But still, you worry. You know what happens to those who speak too loudly. You have seen the punishments, the branding, the exile, the silence enforced by. Still, you do not want her voice stolen. And yet, how can you ask her to stay quiet, when hers is the first voice in generations that does not tremble? At market, she barters with the fishmonger, like an old woman, arms crossed, eyebrows raised. She wins a second mackerel for half a handful of barley. The other vendors whisper. Too bold, someone mutters. She'll shame her family. You carry the fish home. She skips beside you, victorious. That night, she hums as she cooks it. Over the fire, the skin crackles. The scent fills the room. She leans against your shoulder while it cooks, eyes fluttering shut. She should marry soon, your wife says later, her voice heavy. You do not respond. You are watching your daughter, sleep, a trace of ash on her cheek, the barest melody still on her lips. Spring returns. The snow melts. New shoots rise in the paddies. She walks beside you to the fields, singing again. This time, it is an old lullaby, your mother's. You hadn't heard it in decades. Somehow, she learned it. Somehow, it returned. Why that song, you ask? She shrugs. It was waiting. You realize then, her voice is not just new. It carries what was nearly lost. It remembers. She may never wield a sword. She may never write in ink. But her voice loud, playful, questioning, is rebellion enough. She is the sound of a world not yet made. And as you watch her vanish down the path, arms wide, voice rising into morning, you whisper to yourself, let no one silence her. The last frost vanished 2 days ago, melting into the earth like a forgotten sigh. Now the fields breathe again, slow, deep, trembling with green. Shoots push up through old mud, rice seedlings trembling like wet eyelashes beneath the sun. You kneel and run your hand through the soil. It is still cold, but no longer dead. From every hut, thin trails of smoke rise into the blue. Cooking fires, charcoal for tools, boiled water for washing. Life, timid but returning. You pass the thatched roof of the old washerwoman's house and hear a lullaby being sung again. Your daughter's voice. She sings as she sweeps, each note rising like dust into warmth. The world has not changed, and yet it has. You walk the village, path the same you've walked your entire life. The grooves from cartwheels are deeper now, the stepping stones more worn. You know each bend, each tree, each shrine with its cracked fox statue and incense bowl. But today you see them as if, for the first time, as if the winter scraped your eyes clean. There is laughter behind one house, children playing Hanasuki, bouncing feathered shuttlecocks into the air. Their cheeks are round again. Someone has enough rice to spare for treats. You watch, unseen, and smile. The house you built leans slightly now. The door sticks. The walls are smoke-colored from too many winters. But inside, your wife is mending an old kimono. Her fingers know the path of every stitch, the place where the fabric frayed. Most near the collar, where your daughter pulled at it as a toddler. You step in, warm air greeting you like an old friend. She looks up. We'll need more charcoal. You nod. I'll trade for some. Outside again, the road to the river has been cleared. The cherry tree that never bloomed stands tall, dressed, now in new ribbons, pale yellow, sky blue. The red one faded to pink. Your daughter added them last week. She said it looked lonely. Now it looks like it has a secret. You walk to the bridge. It still leads nowhere, but moss has begun to grow along the rails. A boy is fishing from its edge. You nod at him. He grins, then returns to watching the water across the village. The temple bell rings once, a deep, patient sound. The monk who replaced the old one bows to passing farmers. His robes are patched, his bowl empty, but his smile is real in the fields. A woman sings as she plants, the same song your mother used to hum, the same rhythm in each step. Bend, plant, press, stand. Her voice joins the wind, not loud, not perfect, but true. You walk home slowly, carrying a bundle of firewood, and pass the spot where your daughter's drawings once marked the dirt. The bamboo sword has been left by the door. Its tip chipped, its handle fraying. She's inside. Now, tracing poems onto scrap paper with charcoal. She cannot read them. Not yet. But the shapes feel right. You remember the Ronin, the girl who danced away to the city, the storm, the hunger, the songs of the dead. You carry all of it, not as weight, but as thread. Threads that tie you to the past, to those who suffered, who endured, who sang when they had no words. Threads that stretch into the future, to a girl with a sword of dreams and a voice like wind. The world did not shatter, it bent, it bowed, but it did not break. As the sun lowers, the smoke of evening rises from every hearth. You add yours to the sky, the smell of barley, ash, old wood. Your daughter hums at the doorway. Your wife folds blankets. You take one last look at the sky. Nothing has changed, and everything has. You lived this life, you endured it, and now you let it go. As the last embers fade from this forgotten story, I hope it leaves a glow in your own heart. Subscribe if you wish to walk again through the silent pages of history, and share this tale with someone who dreams of lanterns and rain. What part of this story stayed with you the most? As the last embers fade from this forgotten life, may its quiet sorrow linger softly in your dreams. If this journey moved you, stay a while. Subscribe to walk again through the hidden paths of history. The lantern is still warm. The night is still long. Which moment in this story would have broken you, and which one might have helped you survive?